My name is Jeffrey Davis, and that means this is Radio Entrepreneurs. I am host of the show, and we are, being hosted this week by the law firm of Tarlow Breed Hart Rodgers. I don't know if this is a good endorsement or not. My law firm is Tarlow Breed Hart Rodgers. It has been for a long time because of the person sitting beside me, my co-host, Mark Furman.
Hey, Jeffrey, great to be with you.
Right. I hope you don't want me to edit that part out.
No, that's okay. That's quite all right.
Our next guest, a new friend from Radio Entrepreneurs, and kind of a special guy. We like him a lot. Pat Clendenen of Davis Malm D'Augustine, right?
That's correct.
And we're going to talk today, Pat, about the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, correct?
Yes, thanks, Jeffrey. I really appreciate you having me on the show again, and Mark for hosting this event. I appreciate it very much.
Great. Pat, what is the TCPA?
Well, the TCPA, I think, is in this political season an interesting construct because there's a lot of good news and a lot of bad news. Back in the 1990s, I think, for those of us who remember the 1990s, and a lot of businesses were making unsolicited phone calls to people. And so in 1991, Congress decided to enact the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, and then which led to the the advent of the National Do Not Call Registry, basically to regulate the interaction between businesses and consumers such that it was in a consensual way. And as the communications abilities expanded to fax and now to text, the regulation has expanded. So in 2005, Congress passed the Junk Fax Protection Act. And I'm sure, Mark, you and Jeffrey and Mark all remember getting a fax from Joe's Deli or, Bahama Vacation Fax call for these great rates. And so it was designed to prohibit that kind of activity because it was unconsensual, and Congress, in its infinite wisdom, made a number of congressional findings that this was wasting people's money because fax paper and ink are expensive, for example. So that, in a nutshell, is what it is. It covers now cellular telephones, residential phones, unsolicited fax advertisements, and text messages and telemarketing calls. So that's, broadly speaking, what the Telephone Consumer Protection Act does. And it, I think, in large part, does a lot of good for a lot of people.
Has this law been updated at all? Is it being updated?
Well, I think the challenge that we have now is that the FCC has taken a very aggressive stance with regard to certain companies that have made it their business to develop either established business relationships, which is a statutorily enacted safe harbor exception, and also companies that have gone to the effort of getting consent. So, for example, with fax communications, there are lawyers, law firms, groups of people that take advantage of, I believe, this law because there are statutory damages of $500 per fax and up to $1,500 if there's a willful violation. So there is a little game of cat and mouse that is going on out there, and I can tell you a couple of personal stories about that. I represented a company that had been in business for 20 years, and they had established relationships with some of the biggest pharmaceutical companies in the country, and their job was to set up these lunch and learns or kind of soft marketing where there were no sales. It was just instructional on how to use a medical device or a certain drug. And they had a database that the big companies wanted, depending on the region or where they were going to be, and they would have a doctor come in and speak. So this was their business for 20 years, and after they got hit with 3 class actions, one in the Eastern District of two in the Eastern District of Missouri and one in the District of Connecticut, which are still pending but stayed, they decided to wind down because the contracts were drying up, and a lot of insurance coverage excludes not only Telephone Consumer Protection Act coverage, but also, so that's a for the listeners that are out there doing faxing, they need to make sure that they have coverage for this kind of litigation. And the issue that I see is that my client had spent a long time getting consent of these people to receive the faxes. And so Congress says this law is designed to prohibit unconsented to calls and faxes and everything else. But because the FCC had prescribed a certain notice that had to be on the fax, if there wasn't one bit of information, there was no substantial compliance or safe harbor involved, that there are law firms and corporate plaintiffs that are out there suing for class actions for multi millions of dollars of damages for what I believe to be unregulated activities if you look at the statute.